Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Sunny Vanderstar. Today's topic is Grand India Wildlife Adventure Trip Highlights from Aditya Panda. And it will be presented, of course, by our fabulous NatHab expedition leader, Aditya. Aditya, welcome back from the field. I cannot wait to hear your stories and see your always stunning imagery. So let's go for it.
Thank you, Sunny, and hello, everyone. I'm dialing in right from the middle of peak tiger season in India, and I'm between trips. Um, this last Sunday is when I finished my last Grand India wildlife adventure of the season, and I'm looking forward to our next tiger trips, the India Tiger Quest and India Tiger Safari, which is a photo expedition. And I'll be starting the first India Tiger Quest of the season on the 2nd of April. So can't wait for it. But before we get into the India Tiger Quest season, I wanted to share some fabulous highlights from our Grand India wildlife adventure. But before that, let me introduce myself for those of you who are watching one of my webinars for the first time and for those of you who haven't traveled with me in the past. My name is Aditya Panda and I have been leading NatHab expeditions in India since 2016. I primarily lead Grand India Wildlife Adventure, India Tiger Quest, and India Tiger Safari, which, as I mentioned, is a photo expedition. When I'm not leading NatHab expeditions, I am based in eastern India in a state called Odisha, which happens to be my home state, and I engage myself in conservation issues in tiger and elephant landscapes in this part of India. So let's get started with our webinar. So a lot of you must have tuned in to watch this webinar on the 28th of February, and I'm sorry I couldn't present it that day because of unforeseen circumstances, and that's why I'm presenting it today, almost a month, 3 weeks late. And in the meantime, I have actually gone on another Grand India wildlife adventure. And as I was preparing the slides for this webinar, the thought did come across to my mind of whether I should make this webinar as a trip highlights or whether it should be a season highlights, because just as I was mentioning a few days ago, I had finished my last Grand India wildlife adventure of the 2023-24 season. But then again, there's been so much happening on these trips and such fabulous sightings, so many interesting, exciting wildlife encounters that we have been having through the season that I thought an hour-long webinar might not do justice to a season highlights webinar. Therefore, I decided to stick to the webinar I was supposed to present on the 28th of February, and therefore this webinar shall focus on the trip that we did through January and February of 2024. So for those of you who do not know, the Grand India Wildlife Adventure is a 2 week long, almost a 2 week long safari of India, covering 3,500 miles across the Indian subcontinent and taking us on a fabulous expedition to two fantastic national parks in central India and another national park in northeastern India. And most people will agree that this itinerary is the best way to see as much wildlife as one possibly can, especially what we call megafauna in a 2 week period across India. There simply isn't any other itinerary or any other trip that can show a traveler as much megafauna, as many large mammals and birds across a safari of India in that period of time. So our trip started on the 30th of January. We usually start the trip with a city tour of Delhi. The trip begins at Delhi. I fly into Delhi. Our guests arrive at Delhi, and we meet there. And on the first day, we have a city tour, followed by a pre-trip orientation meeting in the evening. And the next morning, really early, we fly to a small airport in the heart of India at a place called Jabalpur. So on that particular morning, our flight was delayed, and we had started really, really early to the airport at Delhi. We had woken up at 3 or 3:30 in the morning, and we had left for the airport by about 5:30. And therefore, waiting at the airport for that long, our flight was delayed by a couple of hours. The reason was fog, and waiting at the airport that at that hour in the morning is not the most pleasant thing. So our patience was running a little thin. We were a little tired and we were a little hungry, and we were still trying to keep our spirits up as we drove to our first destination, the Bandhavgarh National Park and Tiger Reserve um, in central India. Um, the slow traffic on the road did not help our patients, but we utilized that moment for photographic opportunities. And we tried to make the best of the day as we always do. And we arrived at Bandhavgarh. As you arrive at Bandhavgarh, the road narrows down to a single lane road. And to reach our camp, which lies in the buffer zone of the national park, you have to actually drive through a portion of the buffer zone first, and then through a portion of the core zone, and then out into the buffer again, and then reach our lodge. So as you drive down into the park, there are gates that announce your arrival in the national park. They announce the boundaries of the national park, and the first gate at the buffer zone says "Welcome to the land of tigers." And the buffer zones of national parks are basically, uh, a stretch of land around what we call the core zone, or you can consider that the nucleus of the national park. The core zone has no human habitation. Wildlife is first priority, and the objective in the core zone is to keep it as free of human habitation and human presence as possible. But the buffer zone is a multi-use zone where you have wildlife habitat, where there is free movement of wild animals, but there are also villages and people and fields and farmland. So as we cross the first gate into the buffer zone of Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve and National Park, heaving a sigh of relief after the long day we had. Um, on the narrow single lane road, at one point, just after crossing the gate, we saw a car coming in the opposite direction. And our convoy of 4 cars slowed down to a stop to allow the oncoming car to pass. And just as the car crossed us, I was in the lead vehicle in the first car. And just as the car crossed us, to my right by the roadside, I noticed a tiger's head. And even as I screamed, "Tiger, tiger, tiger," to my guests who were sitting with me in the car, and who took these pictures, the pictures that you're about to see in the next few slides. Thank you, Kenneth. Kenneth Reek was the guest who took these pictures. Even as I said, "Tiger, tiger, tiger," this tiger, which was initially seated, it was lying down by that bamboo bush clump of bamboo that you see behind him. It had raced across the road, and to our left hand side were some cattle grazing, and the tiger had, in less than maybe 2 seconds, it was on one of the cows. And even as we were processing all of this in our minds, by the time he was on the cow, he was practically outside my window. I was sitting on the front passenger seat, and the tiger was practically outside my window. And even as we were processing all of this in our minds, we hear a man scream, and we see an old man with an axe running at the tiger. Now, please do not laugh at this illustration. This was the best I could do, because none of us managed to take a picture or video of the man who came running. So I just used good old AI to try and generate an image, and it isn't very far from what had actually happened. And this man comes running, screaming at the tiger, and then the tiger dropped the bullock. It had actually caught a bullock. It dropped the bullock and ran a few feet away.
Can you see the tiger?
It's right here.
Oh my God! Look at that!
Look at him. He's looking for
expedition leader in training, Yaju.
Okay, we'll reverse. We'll come out to the open. Okay. पीछे लो, थोड़ा और पीछे लो. आ रहा इधर ही आ रहा है. पीछे लो.
Just after he had dropped the bullock,
stay.
He backed away and was impatiently hanging out in that area, turning.
You want to open your windows? You can. कुछ नहीं, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. गाड़ी के चक्कर में छुपा है.
And you can see some other cattle running away.
Oh yeah, open your windows. You take.
Excuse me, Aditya. Aditya, I just want to let you know that we're actually hearing the video. We're hearing the sounds. So if you might want to just let us hear you talking or the video one at a time.
Okay, thanks, Sunny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, the tiger then stepped away, maybe 30 feet or so from the bullock that it had just caught. And, we had this man standing there. The bullock wasn't dead yet, unfortunately. And the tiger then moved away to the back, and the man was right outside my window where a moment before the tiger had been. And he had his back to me. And I had, at that point of time, rolled down my window, and I was telling him that maybe he should back away. Maybe it wasn't the safest thing to do to, stand there right next to a tiger's kill when the tiger itself was in the adrenaline rush and heat of the moment. Tigers naturally will try and avoid people, especially people on foot. They will go out of their way to not be seen by people. They will go out of their way to not come across people. Tigers, like most large predators and most wild animals, tigers are terrified of human beings. It's a deep genetic memory, probably, that was set way in our prehistoric past, when our ancestors, despite being very slow biped primates, were still hunting a lot of large carnivores and large herbivores with spears and bows and arrows. So tigers will avoid people, and especially when a person comes screaming, running at a tiger, 9 out of 10 cases, the tiger will run away. But this particular tiger happened to be a young male who had just become independent from his mother. He was probably 3.5 years old, and it did not have the confidence that and boldness that an established male might have. So, had this been a large male tiger, an established dominant male, or even a tigress that had become, that was in the prime of her life, uh, he or she would probably not have left the kill and run away, and things could have ended very unpleasantly for the old gentleman who was grazing the cattle. Um, so, concerned about that, I was requesting him to back away. I tried to reason with him that, the bullock could not be saved anymore anyway, and that he should just probably let the tiger have his kill and move away from there, because he would anyway get compensated for the loss of his bullock. And that is the protocol across India. If wild animals kill domestic animals, the owner is compensated the price of the animal or more than that. But, as I was trying to use my logical reasoning, the gentleman turned around and looked at me, and that was certainly one of the most humbling moments of my life, and I almost felt ashamed for having tried to reason things out with him at that moment, because when he turned to look at me, there were tears streaming down his eyes, and that is when I realized that you know we can reason as much as we want to. We can compensate whatever we want to try and mitigate human wildlife conflict. But when a poor farmer or a poor livestock owner watches his or her hard earned property, or in this case, an animal that the cowherd had probably seen, raised, seen growing up from a calf, getting killed like this in front of their eyes, their emotions trump logic. And well, it was certainly one of the finest displays of human bravery that I've ever seen. But at the same time, for me and for the rest of our group, it was also a first-hand, experience of what human-wildlife conflict actually looks like. Um, the situation could have easily turned ugly. The tiger might not have just dropped his kill and run away. The tiger could have charged back at the person, and a big male tiger or an established tigress could have even swiped a paw at the person, and that could have been that particular tiger's first human kill. And then, when that happens, it does not take very long for a tiger to realize that humans are not something to be scared of, but that humans are something that can be killed fairly easily. And then it doesn't take very long for a tiger to turn into what is infamously called a man-eater. And when that happens, of course, the fate of that particular tiger is sealed, but also, precious human life is lost. Um, so, I often talk about how successful India has been in protecting its wildlife, despite being a highly land-starved nation and densely populated nation. But, human-wildlife conflict is, you can call it a byproduct or an issue that is constantly plaguing conservation here in India. And be it tigers, be it elephants, be it sloth bear, or even animals like saltwater crocodiles, this is an issue that we constantly have to work with, and something that conservation efforts across India are constantly trying to mitigate. Now, to a happier tiger story. So, while still in Bandhavgarh, one morning we decided, our groups travel in three jeeps when on safari. on the Grand India Wildlife Adventure. And often our jeeps will split away, scouring the zones, covering more ground between us, seeing more things between us. And one such morning, we chose to go away from the crowds. We chose to go away from other jeeps and explore parts of the park where there might or might not be tiger sightings. But our objective that morning was to be away from the crowds and just watch whatever came our way. Usually, when you go on game drives in these parks, um, the primary objective of most people out on safari is to look for a tiger. And basing on what has happened the previous day or the previous morning, people will tend to focus on areas where tiger movement is most promising and where chances of seeing tigers are the most. So if you go with the sole objective of finding a tiger, you are very likely to, see other jeeps also going there with the same objective. But sometimes, especially after we have seen enough tigers, we will choose to just go away and just let the jungle reveal itself. And more often than not, we get such pleasant surprises. So that morning we were driving and we heard uh, some, very promising alarm calls that were being given by a langur monkey. And as we stopped and heard and drove up and down the road, utilizing our knowledge of the lay of the land and the likely areas where tigers or leopards could walk, we came across this beautiful male tiger. And he went in there and just lay down. He laid down in the bushes and fell asleep for a while. And uh, later, of course, he would appear again on the road. And there, beautiful male tiger. He appeared on the road, gave us some fantastic photographic opportunities, and laid down again. And it was just mesmerizing, and it's one of the greatest privileges ever to be parked next to a tiger who is absolutely at ease with your presence there, and you are the only vehicle there. There are no other people besides you, and you just sit there, turn off the engine, and just soak in the experience, the moment. And I can assure you that all the while you're pinching yourself, trying to see if this is real or if you're dreaming. And believe me, I have had this experience so many times now through my career as a naturalist. But even now, when it happens to me, even I pinch myself to make sure I'm actually experiencing it and not dreaming. Anyhow, our male tiger sat down. While we were at it, a jackal also appeared on the road, and we were hoping that there would be some interaction between the tiger and the jackal. But the jackal somehow managed to sniff the tiger and turned tail and ran for its life. The tiger did not react. A while later, the tiger just fell asleep, lied down again on the road and fell asleep. And we just remained there parked. At this point, it was becoming, we were getting to breakfast time. Usually on a game drive, we will drive to a central area where a designated spot in the park where everybody can use a restroom and get down and have breakfast on the hoods of their jeeps. But of course, when you have a tiger to yourself and a tiger that is being so generous with its time to you, breakfast can wait, or so we thought. what we decided to do there was we pulled out a breakfast basket from under the seat. We made pressed, French pressed coffee, and I can assure you that was the best coffee we had ever had. Fresh French pressed coffee while you're seated next to a tiger. And we had our breakfast after that until the tiger finally got up and left. And then it was getting time to go back to exit the park on time. And so that's what we did there. And he got up and left. As the day warms up, the middle of the day, tigers prefer to spend sleeping somewhere really nice and shaded well. So the tiger, as it began to warm up, as the sun began to rise higher, he chose to go away into deep cover, and that was good reason for us to leave and exit the park. After Bandhavgarh, we went to Kanha National Park. After 3 nights at Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve and National Park, we drive to another place called Kanha National Park and Tiger Reserve, which is one of India's finest protected areas. At Kanha, we arrived at about lunchtime and had a nice lunch, and we had time to rest in our rooms. And then around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we went on a nature walk. The nature walk in Kanha is something that we have added to our itinerary starting this season, and it is going to continue on to next season and subsequently. And the nature walk in Kanha is offered right at the edge of the core area. The core area of the national park is demarcated by a river called the Banjar that flows along it. And on the other bank of the river, it's not a very wide river. On the other bank of the river, we can go on a nature walk or walking safari, whatever you choose to call it. And it's a good change from all the driving and flying that we do on this trip, and to get some exercise and get our steps, and also to observe the parks far more closely than is possible from the inside of a safari jeep. On a walking safari, you can examine tracks and signs more closely. You can look at plants, you can look at butterflies, you can look at spiders, and you can really touch and feel the forest far more than you can do in a safari jeep. Of course, the downside of a nature walk, well, it's probably wrong to call it downside, but while you're on foot, especially in relatively large groups, it is far less likely that you will see mammals, especially larger mammals, because most animals will hear you from, much before you can come across them, and they will move away to wait until you pass. So seeing mammals on a nature walk is usually not something that we expect. It's always a welcome surprise when it happens, but it's not something we go into a nature walk expecting. But at that particular time, there was something that that our local nature walk guide knew of, and a very promising wildlife sighting awaited us. So we walked, we stopped, and we sat very patiently at what turned out to be a wild dog den. The Indian wild dog, or dhole as it is called, is in appearance not very similar to the African wild dog. The African wild dog is painted, while the Indian wild dog is a uniform brown-red color, reddish brown. But their behavior, their pack behavior, their hunting styles are very, very similar. And the Indian wild dog is endangered. It is believed that there are fewer wild dogs in India than there are tigers. And wild dog populations across most of India have been constantly falling. You see, wild dogs require massive tracts of habitat that are very, very rich in prey, and they need to be shielded from domestic animals such as domestic dogs, especially because domestic dogs and feral dogs carry diseases such as uh, parvovirus, distemper, and other common dog diseases that your dogs and my dogs get vaccinated against, but the wild dogs do not get vaccinated. So it is very easy for wild dogs to catch these diseases. These are highly transmittable diseases, and these diseases can wipe out entire packs or entire local populations of wild dogs. If they get a chance to. So to see wild dogs, even on a game drive, is always a treat. It is very rare. We don't expect to see them on every visit to any of the areas that they occur in. Our chances of seeing tigers or even leopards and sloth bear are probably higher than our chances of seeing wild dogs. So when this chance of seeing wild dogs, and that too on foot, arose, we were absolutely thrilled, and we did uh, after about 25 or 30 minutes of continuous walking, we reached the area where the wild dog den was known to be, and we sat down quietly at a respectable distance. We did not want to disturb the den in any way. The cubs were in the den, and the pack, the adults, had gone out hunting. Usually, the adults will do that. They'll leave the cubs in the den and go out hunting all day and then come back in the evenings. So we sat there and very quietly scanned the rocks with binoculars. The cubs were first inside. They might have heard our voices, so they hid themselves. But as we waited patiently and quietly, one after one, they started appearing. Um, this picture here is by my colleague and co-expedition leader Yaju Upadhyay, and this one of the two cubs is by Kenneth Reed. Um, so we watched the cubs, and we were hoping that the parents and the adults of the pack would come back while we were still there, but they did not, and we did not want to disturb the area too much. So we got up and came back. Another fantastic sighting that happened to Yaju and his jeep was this beautiful leopardess. So one afternoon, two out of our three jeeps were watching a tiger, and I was in one of those two jeeps, and we were wondering where Yaju's jeep was, because we hadn't seen him, and we were hoping he'd arrive at the scene, and that then all three of our jeeps would get to see the tiger. But Yaju never turned up, and as we were driving back from that tiger sighting, we were driving back towards the gate. We came across Yaju, and we asked him where he was, because he had missed a fantastic tiger sighting. And then he told us that he was only away because he was having an exclusive leopard sighting, and it was a fantastic sighting that they had had. Leopards, especially in tiger country, are especially shy. They're not usually bold like tigers are. They're always trying to be elusive and hiding, because there is a bigger cat, and every leopard tries to remain as low profile as it can in order to survive. Of course, there are some areas where there are no tigers, but leopards are the top cats, and in those areas leopards can be very bold, but not so in tiger country. And when there's more than one jeep, it is very unlikely to have a quality leopard sighting in tiger country. So when Yaju and his jeep crew, his driver, his spotter, and his guests, they managed to track this beautiful leopardess down from alarm calls. Um, they had her to themselves. And just like the exclusive tiger sighting that I had earlier, they had a brilliant leopard sighting. And, with no other jeeps around, the leopard stayed. They got some great pictures and great views. So, on that trip in central India, we had actually seen all of the major large carnivores. We had seen, between the group, we had seen tiger, we had seen wild dog, we had seen leopard, and we also had a couple of really good sloth bear sightings. So all of the four major large carnivores that one looks out for in central India, we had seen them all. And then we went on to Kaziranga National Park, where, of course, we had brilliant sightings of rhino and elephant and wild buffalo, and a lot of excellent birds, as well as animals like the western hoolock gibbon, which are not found anywhere else west of Kaziranga in the rest of India. We also had Kenneth Reek again getting this fantastic picture of Gangetic River dolphin. Now, those of you who are more familiar with animals like killer whales and bottlenose dolphins, which put up all sorts of acts for people, and who you can get some fantastic photographs of, might be wondering why I'm praising a picture of a dolphin that looks very normal or routine. Well, the fact is that the Gangetic River dolphin, or South Asian river dolphin as we call it, like the Amazon river dolphin, is a blind dolphin that inhabits fresh water. And it is one of the only two remaining species of freshwater river dolphins. And, they do not they do not carry out acrobatics like bottlenose dolphins would, for example. They are very elusive, they're very shy. The most you might see is a bit of tail fin, or a bit of, just a little bit of the beak as the dolphin comes out for a quick breath of air. And really, it's blink and you miss it. Whenever we go looking for these dolphins, we see a lot of them, but the sightings are almost always very, very quick. And we sometimes see the whole of a dolphin come out as it sort of dives out and into the water for a breath of air. But it's usually so quick that it's very, very difficult, near impossible, in fact, to get a photograph. In all my years of watching Gangetic dolphin in the Brahmaputra River, I have only managed to get one quick video clip, but I've never managed to get a still photograph. And to all the photography enthusiasts out there, I would like to say that mirrorless cameras these days are coming, the higher end ones especially, they're coming with a feature called pre-capture. So as long as you're looking through your camera and you keep the shutter button half pressed, these particular models of cameras that have this feature will continuously keep recording whatever is going on. And the moment you press the shutter, they're going to save a half-second's pictures before you press the shutter, and a half-second's pictures after you release the shutter. And a lot of these cameras are shooting 20, 30, 40 frames a second. Some of them are even shooting 120 frames a second. So even that half a second's worth of pictures could be 10 pictures, anywhere from 10 to 60 pictures. So if you utilize that feature, if your camera has it, you can get really hard to miss, really hard to shoot situations like this. So that was how our Grand India Wildlife Adventure went. Those were just some, not all of the trip highlights. We saw a lot more. We saw many more tigers. We had some fantastic sightings of a lot of the other fauna that we get to see in the Central Indian parks, like boar and several species of deer and jackals. And with that, I would like to end today's webinar and ask Sunny to throw whatever questions you have at me.
So much. That was just fascinating. So many amazing stories and encounters. Thank you so much for sharing that. Before we start the questions, I want to remind everyone that they can submit questions via the questions field in the control panel. Let's see here if we have any questions popping in. Did you see the greater one-horned rhino?
We did. In fact, if I go a few slides back to, hang on, more than a few slides back. Well, there you go. That is also
wow.
from our
Amazing, amazing.
on elephant back. Yeah.
What time of year was this trip? Was this, you're saying you just recently got back, so it's
This was the trip started on the 30th of Jan. We were on our first game drive. We were in our first national park on the 31st of Jan, and the trip went on until the 12th of February. So the first 2 weeks of February.
so neat. I'm sure you have some of those folks who traveled with you watching today and enjoying reliving the experience. One
Yes.
of our viewers wants to know if there is elephant riding or if there's an older photo of, let's
Uh,
see, do we get to ride on an
uh,
elephant, or is this an older photo with the rhino?
No, we do. We do get to go on elephant back. This picture, in fact, was from that very trip. So on the Grand India Wildlife Adventure, our first morning at Kaziranga National Park is spent on elephant back. We get on elephants that are owned by the park. They're not privately owned. The private ownership of domestic elephants is being phased out in India. But we have a whole elephant corps that works as rangers in the park, and it's impossible to manage these parks without having service elephants. So we do get the opportunity to get on elephant back one morning, and we spend an hour exploring the grasslands on elephant back and getting really close to the rhinos and seeing a lot of other wildlife as well.
Amazing. One of our viewers, I believe, must be a past traveler. They want to know if you saw the tigress that had 5 cubs, and if you know how many cubs are still out there roaming.
Yeah, that's a tigress called DJ in Kanha National Park. Unfortunately, DJ started out with 5 cubs, but she's left with only 2 right now. Um, Only 2 made it to near adulthood. So these 2 cubs are now about 16 or 17 months old, and it's a brother and a sister. We did see them on my last trip, the one I ended on Sunday. Um, the cubs are doing well. They have even begun to hunt. Some of our while we were on that trip, some people even saw the cubs having made their own kill. So they're increasingly beginning to hang out by themselves and not relying so much on the mother. And they look like two very promising young tigers.
Mm. What time of year is best to do this trip? What might you see at different times of the year?
Well, this trip runs from November through April. And I personally believe that each time of the year has its own advantages. In the winter months, that is November, December, January, and till about the early part of February. Usually, winter lasts well into February in India, but this year we had, because of the El Nino, a shorter winter. But yeah, in the peak of winter, the parks are stunning. Every morning there is thick mist rising from the grasslands, beautiful sunrises and sunsets. And the best thing about winter is that the tigers are in beautiful winter coat, very thick, rich winter coat. And I think tigers look their best in the winter. There is also a lot of courting, an increased amount of courting activity among tigers. They're moving around a lot more. You can hear them roar. You're more likely to hear them roar. Besides, winters are also great for seeing a lot of excellent birds because you get the winter migrants coming in. Then comes spring, which is, say, the later half of February, March, and the early part of April. And spring has its own advantages. The forest is lush with flowers, not with leaves, with flowers. Our fall is in the spring. As the forest prepares for summer, a lot of the trees will begin shedding their leaves and coming into flower and fruit. So the forest looks beautiful. It smells beautiful. The vegetation begins to become more sparse. Water begins to dry up, which enables much easier sightings. So, say the months of the later half of February, the whole of March, and the first half of April is what I would consider spring. Spring also has the added advantage of being a very comfortable time of the year to watch these animals. It isn't as hot yet, and the mornings and evenings are still pleasantly cool. Um, and then, of course, as we move into April, it begins to warm up, water begins to dry up, and tiger sightings and sightings of other animals like elephants increase quite a lot. So every time of the year has its own advantages.
Mhm. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between this trip and a photo expedition?
Sure. So, Sunny, our photo expedition, there isn't, as of now, a photo expedition version of this trip. Our tiger photo expedition takes us to another park called Ranthambore, and it operates in the summer from April through June, and it is a 10-day long trip. It focuses on one national park, which happens to be the hottest and driest tiger habitat anywhere. And we go there in the hot time of the year. So our chances of seeing tigers are tremendously higher than, say, any other time of the year. That habitat is also very arid and very sparsely vegetated. So viewing is also easier. And from a photographic perspective, it is much easier and much more reliable to get great tiger shots, almost every other day on that trip. Besides the photo expeditions, you know, focus on um, people who take their photography seriously. So we will make additional time to focus on interesting photo opportunities. We will spend more time and more, resources trying to ensure that our guests get fantastic photographic opportunities. We will even take time out to have little workshops wherever we can fit them in. to the itinerary to help learn from each other, to help improve each other's photography skills. And we also set time aside for a bit of travel photography, a bit of street photography, additional time to photograph monuments and architecture, and we will even do things like going out at night if conditions permit, to try night sky photography and things like that. Also on that trip, the group sizes are smaller. Our tiger photo expeditions have no more than 6 people per departure, and no more than 2 people per jeep.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying all those differences. I think we have one last question. Where do you stay overnight? Can you talk a little bit about the accommodations?
Our accommodations are first class safari lodges. We use the best properties wherever we travel to. These lodges are, highly sustainable, yet at the same time extremely comfortable and even luxurious. They provide equivalent of 4-star or 5-star hotel services, but they do so in a way that is sustainable, that does not impinge upon the landscape, that prioritizes local employment. And these properties also will typically tend to be large properties with just a tiny corner of the entire property having the beautiful accommodations that we stay in, while the remainder of the property actually adds to the acreage of the national parks. So you have wildlife freely moving through the properties, while you are staying in absolute comfort and luxury uh, in your cottages or rooms or tents, whatever the property might be offering.
Hmm. Sounds amazing. Well, that's the last question we have time for today, so I will hand it back to you for closing comments.
Thank you, Sunny, and thank you to our wonderful audience. Particular thanks to my lovely group who traveled with me on this trip that I was talking about. Uh, for the first time in a long time, I actually did not have to rely on using my own pictures. Almost all pictures, except for a few tiger pictures, on this webinar are pictures taken by our guests and pictures that they have posted on the amazing photo share feature that we have on the trip portal on NatHab now. So those of you who have traveled with NatHab recently, or those of you who are about to travel with us, do remember to use that feature. It's a great way of sharing your pictures with your co-travelers. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. I look forward to seeing you all soon again. Thank you.
Thank you again for sharing these stories and images with us. And I want to thank everybody who tuned in. Please join us again tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I'll conclude the webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.